if you haven't got a computer and make a movie. Now, I say that kind of energetically because someone told me that when I was very young. I was it wasn't to do with film though, but there's a marvellous theatre director who is here quite often called Peter Brook. I don't know if anyone knows him, but he came out and he was doing the Mahabharata, which is kind of the, massive Indian epic. Yeah. And I was lucky enough to get selected because in our country part of the deal was there would be some assistants to be his assistant. And on the first day he turned to me and said, "What are you doing here, my dear boy? My best suggestion to you is that you go off and get on with it. Do it. Get on with making stories." And I think that is probably the most useful advice that you can pass on to anyone.
Well, you did a great service, actually. They were showing one of the set-to-screen series of podcasts that you made, but there is a series, I think, of about 9 podcasts that were made during the production of Australia that walk step by step through the process of writing, music, production design. It's a great little film education. So,
I hope so. I mean, we agreed to do it because, actually, just because in Australia, in terms of filmmaking, do you know, when I started into doing this process of wanting to make films, although it goes back to when I was very young, all of the community of filmmakers, from Peter Weir, Jane Campion, and they're always so supportive and helpful. And they just, I knew nothing really about big technical filmmaking when I made Strictly Ballroom. And, Peter Weir was just very helpful. So there's a sort of attitude where I think you have to help each other and pass on what knowledge you have. Now, there is just a sort of the bag of knowledge, and then there's the act of creativity. And actually, in a way, one is a set of sciences, It's a bit like, if you mix 2 paints together, they make a third colour. Then that's, technical. What to make, what to paint, and how to paint it. To a certain extent, it's good to start with aping someone, maybe. But to do that really well, it has to come from a deeply true and personal place, and no one can tell you how to do that.
And you learned all the new tools, because the tools of filmmaking changed since you made Strictly Ballroom in 1992. And one of the great things about Australia is that it's, to me, a real mix of old-fashioned physical location filmmaking, but there's also a lot of, I guess we'll call it computer graphics or new, uses of new technology kind of mixed in together.
Actually, that's a really good point, because I've seen some of the podcasts, but it's, a film like Gone with the Wind, the film that's going to be released out there tomorrow, and no doubt we'll have some spirited comment in the papers, to say the least. That's a nice way of saying critics. And, with my films, they've never been particularly gentle. But you have to stay true to what you believe is the way forward. And it's dispiriting sometimes when people have got lots of brickbats and all that sort of stuff. But if you don't, then you're not doing all you can, to fulfill what you set out to do. And I represent, by the way, a team of hundreds of people. Really, I'm just the captain, and it's deeply collaborative. So one of the philosophical decisions we made in this film was that if you're going to have broad comedy, which we do have, and you don't see any of that in the trailers, by the way, but that's marketing, and we can talk about that later, right? Whatever you do, don't show the comedy. No laughs, please. So that's broad comedy next to romance, action, and drama all in one film. Then you need a cinematic language in which those things can sit. And if you think it's not naturalism, what is about to be released in 3,000 cinemas throughout America tomorrow, right? It sits in a kind of heightened world. Now, a film like Gone with the Wind is highly comic, romance, some action, lots of drama. We go from fiddly-dee to God is my witness, I'll never be hungry again. And to sit that, the visual language of the cinema, of Gone with the Wind, when Scarlett is doing that, she's holding up a turnip, I think. She's holding up a turnip. I think the turnip is probably not real. I'm sure it's a prop. But the scenery behind her is definitely not real. That is a painted glass backdrop. And yet, the acting, the emotion is very true, and it's amplified by the visual picture. The red sky and it's heightened. So it's amplifying the internal emotion of the character. Now, we attempted to do this in a kind of modernish way, in that is what we called the lean and the Lucas. Now, the lean was going out on location and shooting on location reality, although manipulated reality, because, for example, where the house is, if you've seen any of the footage, in relation to that mountain and that tree, we use a lot of satellite technology to line them up absolutely exactly so they formed a very pleasing shape to the eye, what we call the postcard. And then, like, we were surveying. We just didn't go like, oh, the house would be nice here, plonk it there. So we manipulated reality, and then that's the David Lean of it, and the George Lucas of it was to take visual effects and mix the two things together. Now, the visual effects in this film, rightly or wrong, and as to the success of this is in the lap of the audience. But instead of making them so much about reality, it was about making them beautiful, as beautiful as possible, so that they were painterly. And so we mixed these two techniques together, or these one reality and a technique, to create the sort of visual language of the film.
Yeah. I'm going to ask one thing, and then I want to open it up to the audience. But we haven't talked about this amazing character, Nuala, at the center of the film, played by this young actor, Brandon Walter. And you talked about the stolen generation, but the film is actually narrated and has this sort of young, biracial character at its center. And it's, as soon as people see the film, it's going to be one of the most memorable characters I think people see on screen. So could you talk about maybe creating that character, finding that actor?
No, I will talk. I mean, it's.
Okay.
I'm just reeling this morning, actually, from the effect in the screenings last night. Now I've seen it in Los Angeles with audiences, many screenings, and here. And there is no doubt that something quite beyond my expectation has happened in the effect that little boy is having on audiences. What is so incredible about it is, at the center of the romance is this child, a 7-year-old boy, who is mixed race. And the whole film is hung on him. He narrates it. He's at the center of the drama. And I obviously had to cast that. Now, in Australia, getting a 7-year-old European boy would be difficult. It's not like there's an agency or anything, It's not like LA where you go and there's lots of kids going, for 6 but it's different. And now, an Aboriginal boy at that age who can act. Our team saw 1,000 boys throughout the country. That came down to 200. I went on the road with my colleagues and we auditioned maybe 35, going through communities as they call them, and it was extraordinarily eye-opening and life-changing. 10 of them came to Sydney. Of the 10, 2 were possibilities, 1 not really. That left Brandon Walters. You've got to imagine, just to give you some context, that just to get enough trust with Brandon's family, I had to, in the middle of pre-production, go out to the bush, live with them, hunting kangaroo, eating grubs, that sort of stuff. Not really eating grubs, actually, just ants. And living traditional lifestyle to get trust, to bring the family down and the extended family to come and live in Sydney. Then about 6 weeks later, he is acting opposite Nicole Kidman and Hugh Jackman. It's a little surreal. I am jet lagged, but I did read in the Los Angeles Times yesterday that they said, and Brandon Walters is a cert for an Oscar nomination. I'm thinking, right at the moment, he's back up in Broome hitting a large lizard on the head with a lump of wood. And he has absolutely no idea what is going on or what effect he has had on people. Now, it's a little hard for me to talk to you about the film because you haven't seen it, and it could sound like spin, but I think without over-gilding the lily, I have seen the film now in several screenings, and there's, there's sure there will be people who don't get it, but much more than Moulin Rouge. I mean, there's some patterns that have arisen. I don't want to write our own reviews, but definitely, the "I cried 4 times" phrase has come up a lot, and I would say of the 4 cries, he'd have to be responsible for at least 2. So, on the "I made people cry" scorecard, he's doing very, very well for a first-timer,
Yeah. Okay, well, let's open it up. So I'll repeat the question so everybody can hear it, but right down here.
What was the best day on the set?
Oh, okay. Well, what was the best day or the most challenging day on the set during the production?
Well,